World War I had brought human suffering in European history. Whole societies of nearly every nation in the continent were either directly or indirectly affected by the war. Of the 60 million European soldiers who were mobilized from 1914 to 1918, 8 million were killed, 7 million was permanently disabled, and 15 million were seriously injured. Germany lost 15.1% of its active male population. Austria-Hungary lost 17.1%, France lost 10.5%, and Britain lost 5.1%. Not only were soldiers affected by the tragedies of the war, but civilians were affected also. It is estimated that approximately 5 million civilians died due to the war. The birth rate sharply declined during the war period as well.
The Treaty of Versailles was one of the peace treaties at the end of World War I. It ended the state of war between Germany and the Allied powers. It was signed on the 28th of July 1919, exactly 5 years after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. The other Central Powers on the German side of World War I were dealt with in separate treaties. Although the armistice signed on 11th November 1918 ended the actual fighting, it took 6 months of negotiation and the Paris Peace Conference to conclude the peace treaty. The treaty was registered by the Secretary of the League of Nations on 21st October 1990 and was printed in the League of Nations Treaty Series.
Germany's army was reduced to 100,000 men. The army was not allowed tanks, and it was not allowed an air force, and it was only allowed 6 capital naval ships and no submarines. The west of the Rhineland and 50 kilometers east of the river Rhine was made into a demilitarized zone. No German soldier or weapon was allowed into this zone. The Allies were to keep an army of occupation on the west bank of the Rhine for 15 years.
The loss of vital industrial territory would be a severe blow to any attempt to Germany to rebuild her economy. Coal from the Saar and Upper Silesia in particular was a vital economic loss. Combined with the financial penalties linked to reparations, it seemed clear to Germany that the Allies wanted nothing else but to bankrupt her. Germany was also forbidden to unite with Austria to form one superstate, in an attempt to keep her economic potential to a minimum.
Okay. There are 3 vital clauses here. 1. Germany had to admit full responsibility for starting the war. 2. Germany, as they were responsible for starting the war, they had to be responsible for all the war damage caused by the First World War. Therefore, Germany had to pay the reparations, the bulk of which would go to France and Belgium, to pay for the damage the infrastructure of both countries by the war. Quite literally, reparations would be used to pay for the damage to be repaired. Payment could be in kind or in cash. The figure was not set as Versailles. It was to be determined later. The Germans were told to write a blank check, which the Allies could cash when it suited them. The figure was eventually put at £6,600 million, a huge sum of money, well beyond Germany's ability to pay.
Germany was crushed by the defeat in the World War I. The German people and their politicians felt that they had been punished too harshly by the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. This created much resentment in Germany. Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party used these feelings to encourage the German people to ignore the conditions set out the treaty, and thus Germany began building a large army, navy, and air force. This is a somewhat simplistic answer, but this reason did serve to establish the basis for Germany wanting to rise up again and show the world that they would not continue to be suppressed by the conditions of the treaty or by the politicians in other countries in Europe.
All Quiet on the Western Front is a novel by Erich Maria Remarque, a German veteran of World War I. The book describes the German soldiers' extreme physical and mental stress during the war. and a detachment from civilian life felt by many of these soldiers upon returning home from the front. The reason that the book is called Quiet on the Western Front is because that was what the newspapers reported to the people. The meaning of the phrase was they haven't done any progress yet. In World War I, most of the battles were fought in ditches, and the battle was about gaining land on enemy land.
The book tells the story of Paul Bäumer, a German soldier who, urged on by his school teacher, joins the German army shortly after the start of World War I. His class was scattered on the platoons amongst fishermen, peasants, and laborers. Bäumer arrives at the Western Front with his friends and schoolmates, Charlton, Müller, Kropp, and a number of other characters. There they meet Stanislaw Kaczynski, an older soldier nicknamed Cat, who becomes Paul's mentor while fighting at the battlefront. Bäumer and his comrades have to engage in frequent battles and endure the dangerous, often dirty conditions of warfare.
The main character and narrator is Paul Bäumer, a 19-year-old boy from Germany who deploys to the Western Front where he experiences the severe psychological and physical effects of the war. Before the war, Paul was a creative, sensitive, and passionate person, writing poems and having a clear love for his family. But as the war changed, his attitude and personality, poems and other aspects of his life were... But as the war changed his attitude and personality, poems and other aspects of his past life become something Paul could not remember having any link to, and he learns to disconnect himself from his feelings. He feels he can't tell anyone about this. He feels he can't tell anyone about his experiences and feels like an outsider where his family is concerned. By the end of the book, Paul realizes that he no longer knows what to do with himself and decides that he has nothing more to lose. The war appears to have snuffed out his hopes and dreams, which he feels he can never regain. After years of fighting, Paul is finally killed in October 1918, on an extraordinarily quiet, peaceful day. The army report that day contains only one phrase: all quiet on the Western Front. As Paul dies, his face is calm, as though almost glad the end had come. As though almost glad the end had come.
The overriding theme of All Quiet on the Western Front is the terrible brutality of war, which informs every scene in the novel. Whereas war novels before All Quiet on the Western Front tended to romanticize what war was like, emphasizing ideas such as glory, honor, patriotic duty, and adventure. All Quiet on the Western Front sets out to portray war as it actually was experienced, replacing the romantic picture of glory and heroism with a deadly, unromantic vision of fear, meaninglessness, and butchery. In many ways, World War I demanded this depiction more than any war before it. It completely alerted mankind's conception of military conflicts with its catastrophic levels of carnage and violence. Its battles that lasted for months, and its gruesome new technological advancements, machine guns, poison gas, and tensions that made killing easier and more impersonal than ever before. Remarque's novel dramatizes these aspects of World War I and portrays the mind-numbing terror and savage of war with a relentless focus on the physical and psychological damage that it occasions. At the end of the novel, almost every major character is dead. The war's devastating effect on the generation of young men who were forced to fight it.